I never thought I'd be the guy who had to deal with an unfaithful spouse. When I married Sarah, I was in my mid-20s and we had this perfect, picturesque life in Denver. We lived in a cozy little house, both had decent jobs, and everyone said we were the couple to beat. Friends came to us for relationship advice because we seemed so solid. But looking back, I can see the cracks I was too blind to notice. At first, things seemed normal. Sarah was always a bit of a social butterfly, and I admired her for that. She was charismatic and her beauty drew people in. But then the late nights with friends started. I remember the first time she said she was going out with her pals from work. I thought nothing of it. I mean, it's perfectly fine for a woman to have her own social circle, right? But soon it became a routine. Once a week turned into twice, and before I knew it, she had a whole new life that I wasn't a part of. I noticed little things too, like her changing attire. Suddenly, her wardrobe looked like it came straight from a fashion magazine, tighter clothes, higher heels, and more makeup than I had ever seen her wear. When I asked her about it, she just shrugged it off, saying she was trying to impress me. Yeah, right, it didn't add up. One evening after a long day at work, I was casually scrolling through social media while waiting for dinner. I stumbled upon a post that made my heart drop. It was a picture of Sarah with some guy, their arms wrapped around each other, huge smiles plastered on their faces. The caption read, "Best shoot ever with my beautiful muse, photography art." I stared at it in disbelief. Who the hell was this guy? My heart raced as I clicked on the photographer's page and started digging. His name was Jake, and he was a well-known photographer in our city, his portfolio full of stunning women, each one exuding that "I'm better than you" vibe. The days that followed were a whirlwind. I couldn't shake the feeling of betrayal. I confronted Sarah the next night, heart pounding as if I were about to step onto a stage. I asked her about the photo, trying to keep my voice steady. "So, what's going on with you and Jake?" Her reaction was something I'll never forget. She laughed like it was some bad joke. "Oh, please, it was just a fun photo shoot, babe. You know how photographers are, flirty, but that doesn't mean anything." Flirty? I could feel anger boiling inside me. Flirty? Is that what it's called when you're in someone's arms like that? I could see her scrambling for words, her mind racing for a plausible excuse. "It was just for the art, I swear. You're overreacting." Every word she said felt like a slap in my face. I was torn between wanting to believe her and the growing conviction that this was more than just a harmless fling. I felt betrayed, confused, and utterly enraged. I wanted to scream, throw things to make her feel the pain she was inflicting on me. Instead, I just stood there, feeling the weight of her lies suffocating me. It was a long, sleepless night. I tossed and turned, my mind racing with thoughts of Sarah and Jake. I replayed the moments in our marriage, the laughter, the plans, the love. It was like I was watching a movie where the main character was blindsided by betrayal. I was in shock, oscillating between anger and sadness. This was my wife, the woman I'd built a life with, and here she was, shattering my world. As the days plodded on, I found myself replaying the confrontation over and over. I had questions that haunted me. How long had this been going on? Had she been with him while I was at work? The more I thought about it, the more my heart sank. I felt like a fool for not seeing it sooner. I needed a plan. I needed to figure out how to deal with this mess. I didn't want to be that guy who just sat back and accepted betrayal. No, I was going to rise from this chaos. I started thinking about what I wanted, not just for revenge, but for myself. My emotions were a storm, but I was determined to find clarity. The next step was going to be crucial, and I had to make it count. I couldn't let her win. Little did I know, this would turn into a journey of self-discovery that would push me to heights I never imagined. After that night, I realized I needed to gather evidence. I wasn't about to confront Sarah again without knowing the full extent of her betrayal. I felt like a detective, piecing together the timeline of her lies. I spent hours scrolling through her social media, looking for more posts or comments that might lead me to the truth. I even went as far as checking our shared calendar, which was a digital nightmare of conflicting events that never seemed to match up. The more I dug, the more I found. She'd been going out with Jake for months. There were photos of them at restaurants, laughing and cozying up to each other. I felt my heart sink deeper with each click. How could she do this to me? The rage mixed with a profound sense of betrayal. It was like someone had reached into my chest and twisted my heart. It was painful and suffocating. The next few days were torturous. I played the part of the oblivious husband, but inside I was a storm of emotions. I focused on my work and tried to keep up appearances with friends, but it was all a facade. I felt like a ghost in my own life, and I knew I had to act fast. Then came the turning point. I decided to confront Sarah again, but this time it would be different. I would be calm, collected, and armed with undeniable evidence. I waited for her to come home after another late night out. I had set the mood in the living room, dimmed the lights, and poured myself a glass of whiskey. I wanted to create a space where the truth could come out, free from distractions. When she walked through the door, her smile faded the moment she saw me sitting there. "You're home early," she said, trying to sound casual. "Yeah, we need to talk," I replied, keeping my voice steady. I pulled out my phone, scrolling through the various pictures I had collected. "I saw these and I think it's time we had an honest conversation. Just how many photo shoots have you had with Jake?" Her face twisted, a mixture of anger and fear flashing across her features. "This is ridiculous. I told you it's just work. You're being so insecure." Insecure. I scoffed, anger flaring up again. "You call this professional? Look at how you're posing with him. You're all over each other, Sarah. Don't insult my intelligence." She opened her mouth to respond, but the words failed her. Instead, she began to stammer, searching for something to say. "It's not what you think. He's just really good at his job. I wanted to look decent for the photos." I couldn't believe her audacity. "You think I'm going to buy that? You think I'm stupid? This isn't about looking good for a photo. You're having an affair." Her composure finally shattered. She started shouting back, lashing out with hurtful words that felt like knives. "You never pay attention to me anymore. This is your fault. You're so absorbed in your work that you didn't even notice me trying to do something for myself." Each word cut deep, but I realized that this was her way of deflecting responsibility. I was angry, yes, but I was also heartbroken. The woman I had loved was standing before me, but she was masked by betrayal and denial. "You're right," I finally said, my voice low but steady. "I haven't been the most attentive husband, but that doesn't give you a free pass to cheat on me. You could have talked to me. You could have told me how you felt, but instead you chose to sleep with someone else." She fell silent, and I watched as the reality of her actions began to settle in. I saw the tears pooling in her eyes, but I didn't feel pity. I felt rage. I had been blindsided, and I wasn't about to let her twist the narrative to make herself the victim. As the confrontation reached its peak, I realized I had a decision to make. I could either try to salvage this relationship or walk away from it completely. I felt the weight of that choice bearing down on me. It would be easy to slip back into old habits, to forgive and forget. But in the silence that followed, I could hear the voice of my self-respect demanding to be heard. I took a deep breath and looked at her. "I think we need to take a break. I need time to think about what I want, and you need to figure out what you want too. But I can't be here while you're tangled up with him." The shock registered on her face, and for a moment I thought she might apologize, but then she huffed, crossing her arms defiantly. The woman I loved had become someone I hardly recognized. "You're just going to throw this away after everything?" "Yes," I said plainly. "I deserve better, we both do." With that, I turned and walked away, feeling like I had just taken the first step toward reclaiming my life. It didn't feel good yet, but I knew I had to stand my ground. I had made my decision, and now, amidst the emotional chaos, I needed to think about how to move forward. I needed to focus on me. I needed a glow-up, something that would not only aid my healing but would also send a message. I wasn't going to let her betrayal define me. I started to think about how I could turn this situation around. I wanted to make her regret losing me. I needed a plan, and I was ready to put it into action. The days following my confrontation with Sarah felt surreal. I was in a fog of anger, confusion, and a strange sense of freedom. For the first time in years, I was focusing on myself instead of trying to be the perfect husband. I structured my days differently, filling my time with activities that brought me joy: hiking, hitting the gym, and even revisiting hobbies I had let slide over the years. It was liberating, and I felt a small spark of enthusiasm returning to my life. But I couldn't shake the feeling of betrayal. I spent nights tossing and turning, replaying every moment of our relationship in my head, trying to understand how we had gotten to this point. The combination of heartbreak and fury was a potent motivator. I started to think about how to reclaim my identity and build a life that would not only heal me, but also show Sarah what she was missing. That's when the idea struck me. I would dive headfirst into the world of social media. While Sarah was out there building her new life with Jake, I would build my own brand, a project that would serve as both therapy and a way to reinvent myself. I wanted to become an influencer, tapping into the aesthetic lifestyle that appealed to so many. I spent hours researching, watching videos, and learning about how to curate content that would resonate with people. I was determined to shine brighter than the both of them. I started small, posting about my fitness journey and healthy eating. I transformed my physical appearance, dedicating myself to the gym and a strict meal plan. I noticed changes almost immediately. I lost weight, gained muscle, and most importantly, my confidence began to surge. The transformation felt incredible, and along with it came a sense of empowerment that I hadn't felt in years. I began sharing workout routines, meal preps, and snippets of my life. Everything seemed to click. To my surprise, people responded positively. Friends started following my journey, and soon, strangers began to engage with my posts. I experimented with photography, channeling the very skills Sarah had admired in her affair partner. I learned how to capture the right angles, the perfect lighting, everything I needed to create an image that told my story. As my following grew, so did my determination. I started networking, reaching out to brands for collaboration opportunities. I was no longer the guy standing in the shadows. I was the one in the spotlight. I felt a rush of adrenaline every time I received a collaboration offer or positive feedback. The thrill of building something from the ground up was addictive, but the emotional roller coaster wasn't over yet. One night, I received a notification that Sarah had tagged me in a post. I clicked on it, and there she was, looking stunning and carefree with Jake by her side. They were at a fancy restaurant, her head thrown back in laughter, and I felt my stomach drop. The post was littered with comments praising her beauty and tagging their couple goals. It hit me hard, and for a moment I felt that familiar sting of jealousy and betrayal creep back in. But then I remembered my mission. I shook off the momentary weakness and resolved to use it as fuel. If she thought she could flaunt her new life without consequences, she was in for a wake-up call. I started to work even harder on my content, focusing on the aesthetic I had created. I wanted to show the world that I was thriving, that I was moving on, living my best life. As weeks turned into months, I found myself in a much better place. I had built a modest following, and with that came opportunities. Brands started reaching out to me for promotions, and I began to attend influencer events. It felt surreal to step into these spaces, surrounded by people who were living the lifestyle I had once envied. I was a part of that world now, and it was exhilarating. One night, I attended a launch event for a fitness brand. The venue was buzzing with excitement, and I could feel the energy in the air. I mingled, taking photos and enjoying the atmosphere. Out of the corner of my eye, I spotted Sarah across the room. She was with Jake, their demeanor relaxed and carefree. They were laughing, and I felt a rush of emotions, anger, sadness, and a twinge of nostalgia. But instead of feeling crushed, I felt empowered. I was no longer that insecure husband. I was someone who had taken control of his life. I decided to approach them. The moment I stepped closer, I could see Sarah's eyes widen in shock. She hadn't expected to see me here, thriving and confident. "Hey, Sarah," I said, forcing a casual tone as if I were just an acquaintance. "Nice to see you." She looked momentarily speechless, her mouth opening and closing as she searched for words. Jake, on the other hand, stood tall, trying to appear unfazed. "What are you doing here?" Sarah finally managed to say, her voice a mix of surprise and irritation. "I've been busy," I replied, nodding toward the crowd. "Just living my life, you know. I'd say it's going pretty well." She shot me a look that was a mix of disbelief and something else. Regret, anger, I couldn't tell, but I didn't care. I had come to show her that I wasn't the weak man she had thought I was. I was rising above her lies and deceit. As I walked away, I caught a glimpse of myself in the reflection of a nearby mirror. I saw a man transformed, full of confidence and purpose. I felt a rush of triumph. It was clear I was on a new path, one that didn't involve Sarah or Jake. They had made their choices, and now it was my turn to take full ownership of my life, to shine even brighter. I was determined to show my worth, not just to them but to myself. With each passing day, I felt more like the person I was meant to be. I was no longer defined by my past, and I was ready to embrace whatever came next. I was finally on the path to becoming the version of myself that I had always wanted to be. After that encounter with Sarah at the influencer event, my resolve to embrace my new life intensified. I was no longer just the husband who had been cheated on. I was becoming someone worthwhile, someone with his own ambitions. The power dynamics had shifted entirely. I was no longer the one left behind, but rather, I was emerging as a successful individual. With each post, each collaboration, and each event I attended, I felt a new sense of belonging. My inbox was flooded with messages from brands wanting to work together, and I was finally being recognized for my efforts. I tapped into my creative side, exploring different styles and aesthetics for my content. Fitness, fashion, travel. I wanted to portray a lifestyle that others would aspire to, and it was working. But the emotional toll of my past didn't disappear overnight. I still had moments of vulnerability when memories of Sarah would creep back in. I'd sometimes sit in my apartment, scrolling through old photos, feeling a pang of nostalgia for what we once had. But instead of wallowing in sadness, I transformed that energy into motivation. Each painful memory became a reminder of how far I had come and why I was determined to keep moving forward. As my follower count steadily grew, I received invitations to collaborate with other influencers and attend exclusive events. I was invited to a weekend retreat focused on wellness and self-care, and I was excited to connect with like-minded individuals. This was a chance for me to network and perhaps even find a new romantic interest, someone who would appreciate me for who I was now, not who I used to be. The retreat was set in a beautiful location by a lake, surrounded by mountains. As soon as I arrived, I felt a surge of positive energy. The atmosphere was vibrant, and everyone was eager to connect. I made new friends, shared stories, and even participated in workshops that challenged my perceptions of self-worth and confidence. I felt a sense of community that I had been missing for so long. One evening, during a bonfire gathering, I sat next to a woman named Mia. She was warm, funny, and incredibly down-to-earth. We hit it off immediately, chatting about our experiences and aspirations. I shared my journey of self-discovery since the fallout with Sarah, and her eyes sparkled with understanding and compassion. There was no judgment, just genuine connection. As the night progressed, we found ourselves wrapped in deep conversation, and I could sense a spark between us. Instead of the bitter reminders of Sarah, I felt excitement and anticipation. Mia had her own story of overcoming heartbreak, and it felt cathartic to share our pasts together. As we laughed under the stars, I couldn't help but think that this was the kind of connection I had been searching for, one built on mutual respect and understanding. The next day, we spent more time together, exploring the retreat grounds and participating in activities. I felt alive in a way I hadn't in a long time. It was refreshing to be around someone who saw me for who I was now, not as someone defined by past mistakes or failures. By the end of the retreat, I knew I wanted to pursue something with Mia. We exchanged numbers, promising to stay in touch. As I drove home, I felt a sense of hope blossoming within me. I was building a new life, one that was filled with possibilities. But just when I thought I was in the clear, I received a message that sent my heart racing, a notification from Instagram. Sarah had tagged me in a post, and I hesitated before clicking on it. It was a photo of her and Jake, posing together at a fancy restaurant, looking every bit the couple they had been portraying online. The caption read, "Living my best life with the best guy." A wave of emotions hit me like a freight train. Anger, sadness, and a sense of betrayal washed over me. It was as if she had thrown down a gauntlet challenging me to respond. I felt a surge of adrenaline. Why was she doing this? Was it a desperate attempt to get a reaction out of me? I took a deep breath, resisting the urge to lash out or comment. Instead, I reflected on how far I had come. I had built a life and identity that was mine, independent of her. I didn't need her validation or approval anymore. I was no longer defined by my relationship with her. That night, I decided to channel my feelings into content. I filmed a candid video discussing resilience and the importance of self-love. I shared my journey of betrayal, not as a victim, but as someone who had taken control of his narrative. I talked about the importance of personal growth and how it was possible to rise from the ashes of heartbreak. The response was overwhelming. My followers resonated with my message, sharing their own experiences of betrayal and recovery. I felt a sense of fulfillment I hadn't expected. I was inspiring others, and it solidified my purpose. As the days turned into weeks, I found myself creating content that focused on empowerment and self-worth. I shared tips on how to navigate heartbreak, how to rebuild confidence, and how to embrace a life filled with positivity. The more I poured my heart into my work, the more I realized how much I had grown. Then one day something unexpected happened. I received a direct message from Sarah. The message was brief, filled with uncertainty and confusion. She wanted to talk. My first instinct was to ignore it, but curiosity gnawed at me. What did she want now? Did she want closure, an apology? I weighed my options carefully. I had moved on, but I could feel the old emotions bubbling beneath the surface. Regardless, I knew I had to address this. I owed it to myself to confront her on my terms. I decided to meet up with Sarah. It was time for a final showdown, time to lay everything out on the table and make it clear that I was not the man she had left behind. I was stronger, wiser, and ready to reclaim my narrative once and for all. The day of my meeting with Sarah arrived, and I felt a rush of conflicting emotions. A part of me was anxious, while another was emboldened by how far I had come. I arrived at the cafe we had chosen, a place we used to frequent during our happier times. As I stepped inside, the familiar scent of coffee and pastries flooded my senses, triggering a mix of nostalgia and determination. Sarah was already there, seated at a small table in the corner. She looked different. Her hair was perfectly styled and her makeup was flawless. But beneath it all, I could see the uncertainty in her eyes. As I approached, I noticed her tense posture. She was fidgeting with her phone, clearly nervous about our conversation. "Hey," I said as I sat down, trying to keep my tone neutral. "Hi," she replied, forcing a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. We exchanged awkward pleasantries, each of us searching for the right words to begin. But the silence stretched on, thick and heavy, until I finally broke the tension. "I saw your post with Jake," I said, getting straight to the point. "It looked like you two are really happy together." Her expression shifted slightly, and I could see a hint of defensiveness creeping in. "Yeah, we are. Things have changed for me, you know. I've been working on myself." "Interesting," I replied, my voice steady. "You seem to have it all figured out when you were with him, but that's not why I'm here. I wanted to talk about us." She looked taken aback, her mouth opening in surprise. "Us? What's there to talk about? You moved on, right?" "Not just about moving on," I said, leaning in slightly. "I wanted to discuss what happened between us and why it matters. You broke my trust in a way that changed everything." Her facade faltered for a moment, and I could see the guilt wash over her face. "I know I messed up," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "I didn't mean for things to get out of hand with Jake. It just happened." "Just happened," I echoed, trying to contain my frustration. "You don't just accidentally cheat on your husband. You made a choice, and you decided to betray our marriage. That's the reality of it." "I know," she said, tears welling up in her eyes. "I was unhappy and I didn't know how to express it. Instead of talking to you, I ran away." "Running away doesn't justify your actions," I replied, feeling the anger rise again. "You could have come to me. We could have worked through it together, but you chose to hurt me instead." She looked down at her coffee, her fingers trembling around the cup. "I'm sorry. I really am. I didn't realize how much I loved you until I lost you." Her words struck a chord within me, but I had to remain firm. I couldn't let my heart soften too much. Love isn't enough when trust is broken. I've spent so long trying to rebuild my life after you shattered it, I can't go back to what we had before. The silence that followed was heavy, filled with unspoken emotions. I watched as Sarah struggled to gather her thoughts, her expression a mix of regret and longing. "I know I can't change the past," she finally said, "but I want to make amends. I want to show you that I've changed." "Change takes time and effort," I said, my tone softening slightly. "But I'm not sure if I can trust you again. I've worked hard to move on, to find myself again, and I'm not willing to jeopardize that for the sake of nostalgia." She nodded slowly, her eyes glistening with tears. "I understand. I don't expect you to forgive me right away. I just hope that someday you can see that I'm trying." I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of our conversation settling in. "I appreciate that, Sarah, but right now I need to focus on my own path. I've found a new direction, one that fills me with purpose and happiness. I hope you can find the same." As we finished our conversation, I felt a strange sense of closure. It wasn't the reconciliation I had once dreamed of, but it was a step toward healing. I could see the regret in her eyes, and while it didn't erase the pain she caused, it felt like we were both finally acknowledging the truth of our relationship. We parted ways, and as I walked back to my car, I felt a sense of relief wash over me. I had faced my past, confronted Sarah, and stood my ground. I had made it clear that I was no longer the man she had left behind. I was a new version of myself, one who was strong, confident, and no longer bound by the chains of betrayal. In the weeks that followed, I continued to pour my energy into my content creation and my growing connection with Mia. We went on a few dates, each one more exciting than the last. She was genuine, kind, and supportive, and I began to see the potential for something real. With every interaction, I felt myself opening up again, allowing new love to blossom. Despite the ups and downs, I realized that the most important lesson I had learned throughout this entire ordeal was the power of resilience. I had been knocked down, but I had risen again, stronger than ever. I was no longer defined by my past. I was building a future filled with possibilities. As I navigated this new chapter of my life, I felt empowered to embrace whatever came next. I was ready to take on the world, one post at a time, and I would make sure to shine brighter than ever before. The best was yet to come, and I was determined to seize it with both hands. The weeks turned into months, and as my connection with Mia deepened, I realized just how much I had grown from the experience with Sarah. Each day felt like a new opportunity, and I was eager to embrace it. My social media presence continued to flourish. Brands were reaching out for collaborations, and my follower count was climbing steadily. I was no longer just an influencer. I was becoming a voice for those who had experienced heartbreak and emerged stronger. Mia became my anchor during this transformation. Our dates were filled with laughter, adventure, and genuine connection. With her, I felt like I could be my true self, no pretense, just authentic moments. We explored the city together, went hiking, and shared our dreams. Each shared experience brought us closer, and for the first time in a long while, I felt the warmth of love that was built on trust and mutual respect. One evening, after a particularly successful event that showcased my journey, Mia and I sat under a canopy of stars. The air was crisp, and we were wrapped in blankets, sipping hot cocoa. It felt magical, and in that moment I turned to her. "Mia," I said, my heart racing, "you've changed my life in ways I never expected. I feel like I'm finally free to be who I am, and I owe so much of that to you." She smiled, her eyes sparkling in the moonlight. "You've done the hard work, and I'm just happy to be a part of your journey. You're inspiring, you know that." As I looked into her eyes, I knew I was ready to take the next step. "I want to be with you fully and completely. I want to make this work. You have shown me what a healthy relationship looks like." Her expression softened, and she reached for my hand. "I want that too. I'm so proud of who you've become." It was a moment that solidified everything I had been building. I knew I had finally moved on from the pain of my past. Sarah's betrayal had initiated a series of changes in my life that I never would have imagined. I had taken that heartbreak and channeled it into something beautiful, and now I was ready to embrace a future filled with love. As I continued to create content, I made it a point to share not just my successes, but also the lessons I had learned along the way. I wanted to inspire others to see that resilience is possible after heartbreak. I wrote about healing, self-love, and the importance of surrounding yourself with people who uplift you. I encouraged my followers to embrace their journeys and to work on themselves, no matter how daunting it may seem. The response from my audience was overwhelmingly positive. People began sharing their own stories of heartbreak and triumph, and I felt a sense of community forming around my content. It was more than just about me. It was about all of us finding our way through life's challenges. Then one day, I received a message from Sarah. I almost ignored it, but something compelled me to read it. She wanted to meet again, to talk more about what had happened between us. I felt a mix of emotions. Part of me wanted to dismiss it entirely, but another part understood the need for closure. I agreed to meet her at the same cafe where we had our last conversation. As I sat there, waiting for her to arrive, I reflected on how far I had come. I was no longer the man who had been shattered. I had rebuilt myself into someone stronger and wiser. When Sarah walked in, she looked different, more vulnerable. Her posture wasn't as defensive as it had been before. She sat down across from me, her expression serious. "Thank you for meeting me," she began. "I wanted to apologize again. I didn't realize how deeply my actions affected you until I saw your journey online. You've turned your pain into something beautiful." I nodded, appreciating her acknowledgement. "Thank you. I've worked hard to rebuild my life, and while our past was painful, it's led me to where I am now. I can't deny that I'm grateful for the lessons I learned, even if they were hard." She looked relieved, and I saw a flicker of hope in her eyes. "I want you to know that I'm genuinely sorry for what I did. I've been going to therapy and working on myself. I know I can't change the past, but I want to move forward in my life too." A part of me felt empathy for her, but I also knew that my path had diverged from hers. "I appreciate that, Sarah, I truly do, but we're both on different journeys now. I've moved on and I'm happy. I hope you find your own happiness as well." Tears welled in her eyes, but I could see acceptance in her expression. "I wish you all the best, truly. You deserve it." As we parted ways, I felt an overwhelming sense of relief. I had faced my past, acknowledged the pain, and had finally given it the closure it needed. I was free to live my life without the weight of those memories holding me back. In the months that followed, my relationship with Mia blossomed. We traveled together, supported each other's dreams, and celebrated our successes. I continued to share my journey online, and people resonated with my story of resilience and transformation. It felt incredible to know that I was not just surviving but thriving. Reflecting on everything that had happened, I learned that life can take unexpected turns, but it's how we respond to those challenges that define us. I had transformed my heartbreak into a source of strength, and I was now on a path filled with love, growth, and endless possibilities. As I looked ahead, I knew that whatever challenges came my way, I was ready to face them head-on. I was no longer just a husband who had been cheated on. I was a man who had reclaimed his life, and I was determined to keep shining brighter than ever before.